The language of video games is something that anyone who has played more than a handful of hours across a few games will have at least a basic understanding of. And no, I'm not referring to the lingo and shorthand that has developed over the years, nor am I talking about the literal coding language used to create video games. What I'm referring to are the universal rules that are set in stone by the gaming's past and slowly evolved into its own defined language. At a very surface level, you can boil down this language to just being recurring themes. But honestly, that would be doing a disservice to the universality of design choices put in play. It's a way for developers to communicate to players without text boxes and pop-ups, or at least in most cases. While a lot of games rely on clear language to teach players, other games hold your hand a little too much, which can get frustrating. Imagine you're playing a shooter for the first time. You can learn, even by accident, that shooting a barrel will more than likely explode, dealing out heavy damage to enemies that were unlucky enough to be caught in the blast radius. If you then pick up almost any other shooter afterwards, you're more than likely to shoot barrels in that game just to see what happens, and chances are it'll have the same effect it did in the last game, because gamers are brought up on most of the same conventions. The knowledge gained here is that barrels equal exploding, and it's pretty much universal across all shooters. You would be hard-pressed to find a platform that starts you on the right side of the screen and has you move left. The opposite, where you move left to right, is so heavily ingrained in our minds that anything else feels foreign. It'd be easy to dismiss this as Super Mario Bros. Or even Donkey Kong setting the standard by having Mario begin his journey at the left and progressing rightwards. While we can look to how we read as an inspiration for this, as Mario was made in the West by Eastern developers, it actually has its roots in film theory. A study showed any characters on film moving right to left makes viewers feel bad or uneasy, while left to right movement is seen as an indicator of success or progression. Alfred Hitchcock's Stranger on a Train uses this idea perfectly in the opening, where it shows the antagonist moving right to left, and while the protagonist moves left to right. With that, let's look to Jonathan Blow's 2008 sleeper hit, Braid. And just a quick warning, this contains spoilers, so click here if you want to skip that. For the majority of the experience, you move left to right, solving puzzles and progressing to the end goal. As the game reaches its climax, it shifts to a very uneasy right to left movement, leading the player to feel unsettled as the reveal sets in that you are in fact the antagonist. This revelation works well in that the entire game had a sense of progression, only to have the rug pulled out from right underneath you. As you can see from this example, this language is more extreme than just the familiarity and comforting safety of the little things we already know about moving in a digital space. It's a Pavlovian conditioning that is set in place from the first game you pick up and is strengthened with every title you experience. You learn what doors can and can't be opened just by looking at them and understanding the context of the game world. This isn't to say every game uses the universal language that's been developed over the years. Oftentimes, this can be why a game isn't successful. It misleads players into what can and can't be done. There has been one series that successfully implemented its own language to players in a way that has been so universally praised, it's now spawning clones and copycats in a subgenre. I'm talking, of course, about Dark Souls. Often praised for being incredibly difficult for players, I personally think that's an unfair assessment of what From Software have achieved with their design. The Soul series, starting with Demons, managed to carve out its own set of rules and principles that are so counterintuitive at first, it manages to set an equal entry point for all players, no matter their skill level. This led to an absolute explosion of popularity once the second title, Dark Souls, started gaining momentum. This is why usually your first Souls experience is a daunting one. Once you understand the world and the language From Software have set out for you, each subsequent title feels like a level playing field rather than feeling entirely new and difficult to get into. However, even with all its new exciting language, not even this series is safe from the recurring themes that we've seen before. A major one is boss room sense, where the white fog doors are sometimes used after discovering the boss. It's more than just the feeling of stepping into that giant arena and just knowing what's about to ruin your day. It's the build up. Knowing you've been in this area for a certain amount of time and thinking, okay, the boss is coming up soon. And this is the common language the Soul series shares with games before it. So what does this mean for the future of game design? If it weren't for the Soul series, I'd say there would be minimal breathing room for the fundamental basics, but clearly that was shown not to be the case. I'm also not trying to say games can't be unique or innovative because, especially more so recently, games are having more and more creative mechanics introduced to them, just with the common language spread across other games out there. A lot of titles don't want you to break their rules unless, of course, it's intentional to the progression. While I think we will see variations on the language of video games over the coming years of the industry, change being inevitable is a good thing. But with that said, there will always be a reason for running left to right, or why we get that feeling that a boss room is imminent that just can't be shaken from the DNA written into gaming.